Hey guys, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dilly DeVito. One of the most common questions that we have today is whether or not the minimum wage is too high, too low, or is it just right? Well, today, guys, I'm going to try and find that out. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you some evidence. We'll talk to an expert. His name is actually Professor Expert. And then I will give my opinion and we will ask you of your opinion. And at the end, I hope you are better informed as an American citizen. Here we go, guys. Hey guys, I've just found something really interesting. Apparently, the first minimum wage in the United States was in Massachusetts in the year 1912. The law was originally to help women and children who are being mistreated in the textile factories and whatnot. I really need to talk to an expert about this. Come on, let's go. Hello, Mr. Expert, and how are you doing today?
I'm well, David. How are you? Thank you for stopping by the university.
No problem. Thank you for being on this show, Mr. Expert.
My pleasure.
Yes, it's quite an honor to see you, sir. I have a couple questions. What can you tell me about the minimum wage?
Well, I hope I can help you out.
Okay. So, Mr. Expert, what can you tell me about the minimum wage?
Well, as you might know, the minimum wage was originally introduced in 1912 in Massachusetts. But you might not know that in 1923, the Supreme Court overturned the minimum wage in a case called Adkins versus Children's Hospital. And the minimum wage was ruled unconstitutional. The court argued that the minimum wage for women violated the Due Process Clause in the Fifth Amendment. The court made the ruling by a 5-3 decision. They said the law prevented citizens from having an equal opportunity to bargain for higher wages. The court referenced the case Lochner versus New York from 1905 that ruled that citizens have equal rights in bargaining.
Okay, keep it going. Wow, that's incredible. Nowadays, no one would dare to say that the minimum wage is unconstitutional.
Well, yes, it's quite a different time than it was then, and it wasn't until 1937 when the Supreme Court in West Coast Hotel versus Parrish decided that minimum wage could be restored to law. In that particular case, there was a young woman who was employed by West Coast Hotel. Her name was Parrish, and she asked that her pay be raised to the minimum wage. But the state of Washington had passed a law that set a minimum wage for women. The West Coast Hotel had refused to pay their employees the minimum wage. So Parrish sued West Coast Hotel for the difference between what she was making and what the minimum wage was. And the state courts ruled in favor of the hotel, stating that the law was unconstitutional.
Well, then how was it overturned?
Well, Parrish appealed the state court decision to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the court reviewed the case in 1936, but it wasn't until 1937 that they made their ruling. It was a 5-4 decision, and they ruled in favor of Parrish. Once again, it was the Due Process Clause that came into effect here, but this time it was the 14th Amendment that helped out. The 14th Amendment states, "No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. That's why it's called the Equal Protection Clause. The court interpreted the clause in a loose manner and determined that the law did not prohibit the state, or I'm sorry, they decided that the law prohibits the state from stripping away liberties and freedoms from people, but it does not preclude the state from stepping in and doing things for the good of the people.
Wow, so from that moment on, we've had a minimum wage in this country.
That's right.
What do you see as being the largest economic impact from having a minimum wage?
Well, since the minimum wage has come into effect, we've seen the American worker protected. If we look at $100 in the year 1937, in the year 1940, the same $100 would have only been worth about $97. The minimum wage protects American workers from inflation. Uh, it gives them a way, or it gives people a way to make money no matter where they work, to make a certain minimum amount of money no matter where they work, what their job is.
And how do you see the minimum wage as it is today? Do you think it is too high, too low, or is it just right?
Well, there are several sides, several ways that question could be answered. It's not an easy question. On one hand, lowering the minimum wage could raise profits for companies and for employers, but we might even see a decrease in the cost of goods and services. But it wouldn't happen overnight. It wouldn't happen instantly. It would take a while for everything to kick in. In the transition time, American people would likely suffer. Our economy would have to be doing really, really well for this even to be considered. Keeping the minimum wage the same is also tricky. It has problems. If we keep the wage at the current levels for too long, the cost of goods will be too much for some people to afford. This probably is the safest option, though, to keep it where it's at, because raising the minimum wage is probably the most dangerous option. For example, when California raised their minimum wage, McDonald's immediately started to roll out touchscreen pay stations where customers could go in and order their food and pay for it without having to interact with a minimum wage food service worker. So California has seen a big drop in food service jobs as a result of raising the minimum wage. So there are some detriments to doing that.
Well, to me, then, I guess it would seem that the minimum wage does protect Americans, but if it is misused, it can also hurt them as well. Thank you, Professor Expert.
You're welcome, David.
And thank you for watching this edition of Hunting History. Once again, I'm your host, Dilly DeVito, and thank you for watching. Remember, adventure is out there.